So sometimes the thing you're reacting to isn't actually the whole thing you're reacting to. And I got to watch this happen in real time this week. We're in this really intense space between eclipses right now. We've just had the solar eclipse in Leo, and we're moving toward the final lunar eclipse in Pisces at a cycle that started back in September of 2024. And personally, I've had this long time, really liminal space within my life, and now it feels, a fine place stepping into a new identity. But apparently, I need to walk some old shit to the door first. So I've been processing and looking back at old relationships, looking at patterns, looking at the ways that I've shown up in my life. And one thing that really became obvious is that I have a history of overgiving. Yeah, compliments of being a Cancer sun and a Virgo rising. So I have a tendency to be overly considerate of everybody else. And hey, a lot of my relationships worked really well as long as I was the accommodating one, as long as I was attending to their needs. But what happened when I had a need? What happens when I needed consideration? That's often where the conflict happened. The thing is that I've thought about a lot of this stuff before, but thinking about something and actually getting it out of you are not necessarily the same thing. There's something really powerful about taking something that's intangible, like it's your head, your thoughts, your emotions, your body, and then you're actually putting it somewhere tangible, like on paper, through journaling, through drawing, through painting. And it doesn't have to be beautiful. It doesn't even have to make sense to anyone else. Sometimes it's just giving something that's living inside of you somewhere else to go. So I was journaling about this, and then my life apparently went, you want to look at the pattern? Okay, here you go. Because shortly afterward, something happened with my daughter, and I got angry. Now, here's where this gets interesting. The boundary I was setting, it was actually valid. This wasn't a situation where I calmed down and went, oh, wow, I was completely wrong. No. There was something happening in the present moment that actually really did need changing. But the amount of the emotion coming through me, it wasn't actually truly only about that moment, because underneath of it, it was actually this much older story. Why am I always the one considering everybody else? Why does everyone else get to do what they want while I'm expected to work around it? When does somebody consider me? And suddenly, I wasn't just reacting to what was happening in front of me. I was actually reacting from all the other times that I had felt that way too. And this is something that I've started noticing more and more within myself. I'm learning about internal family systems, and sometimes when I'm triggered, it genuinely feels like a part of me actually that steps forward, it takes over. So like at first I'm like, I'm in it, I'm angry, I'm responding from that part. And then somewhere in the middle of it, I start to come back, and then I hear myself, and I start to notice the tone of my voice. I notice what's happening in my body, and suddenly there's this little bit of space between the part of me having the reaction and the part of me observing the reaction. And no, I don't do this perfectly all the time. That's actually kind of the point, because I think sometimes we get this idea that if we heal enough, eventually we'll become these perfectly regulated humans who never get triggered again. So, no, that's not healing. The path to healing is, it's getting triggered And then it's maybe at first it's recognizing it maybe 3 days later. And then eventually it might go to 3 hours later. Then eventually you get to 20 minutes later. And then eventually, the sweet spot. You're standing right in the middle of the trigger and something inside you goes in that moment. Ooh, I know what's happening here. And that's what's happened. I was able to change the way that I was speaking in real time. We took some space. I came back and we talked. And instead of abandoning the boundary, we created some structure around what needed to change moving forward, because healing didn't mean that my need suddenly disappeared, because that was a pattern of mine, that if I, emotionally reacted and wasn't perfect in my reaction, my perfectionism made me completely apologize and then, fawn towards the other person. So the healing was that my need still mattered, and the work was being able to separate what actually belonged to that moment from all the old emotion that had attached itself to it. And I think that's one of the biggest things this week has reminded me. There are always going to be more layers. There are probably always going to be things that activate us. And healing isn't becoming someone who never feels a reaction, but maybe healing is actually shortening that distance between the reaction and the awareness. So it's noticing it sooner. It's becoming the observer sooner. It's understanding what's underneath of it sooner. Repairing sooner. Choosing differently sooner. And sometimes an old pattern showing up again, it actually doesn't mean that you haven't healed it, because it actually will show up again and again, so that you can actually practice handling it better. And so that you can actually see how differently you can move through it now. So you get to notice it sooner. You get to practice the different response, and you see the growth that might have been impossible to recognize if nothing ever activated that part of you again. Because healing isn't that the old patterns never show up. It's realizing that when they do, those old patterns don't have the same hold on you anymore.